As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is focused on keeping our loons in top condition. And with expertise in orthopedics, sports medicine, heart care, and more, Allina has the team to keep your family in the game too. The experts at Allina Health take the time to get to know you as a whole person, helping you achieve wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. It's an altogether better kind of healthcare. Learn more at allinahealth.org. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sound of the Loons presented by Allina Health. I was going to say, I feel like I'm joined again by Tani Oluwaseyi, but that was really all the other calls and meetings that I've done with you. This is the first time, I think, is this the first time this season I've had you on this podcast on Sound of the Loons?
I think so. I've done it once each year. I did my rookie year, I remember, and then end of last year, but definitely first time this year.
I feel like when we did it your rookie year, it was almost like a season ticket member thing or something.
It was.
Like a question and answer session. And obviously you had been drafted by Minnesota United. And then last year we got to talk to you at the end of your loan spell with San Antonio and just after you were crushing it. And then now we get to talk to you in this iteration of 2024. And once again, you're crushing it. So, I mean, that's got to feel good. Just continue to do it at every single level. How are you today on this beautiful, is it Wednesday?
It's Wednesday. It
is
Wednesday.
Wednesday. I mean, it's like 75 degrees outside and sunny. I feel like we're doing ourselves. It's shame on us for sitting inside and doing this. We should be doing it outside at a coffee shop.
I think I have to go out and see the sun after this for sure. That's the goal for sure after this.
So you guys have the weekend off, and I know we're gonna go like in reverse and talk about your loan spell. We'll talk about your rookie year, talking about playing in MLS next and all that kind of stuff. But right now, at this moment in time, you guys have a few days off. You have no game this upcoming weekend. What are you doing with your time? How do you spend that time? What's your kind of schedule look like when you get a few days?
Honestly, it's not often we do get a few days. So whenever we do it, guys really look forward to it. And I think that you have two options. It's either you plan a little getaway, do something quickly, and then you're back here for probably Wednesday because we train tomorrow, or you just decide just going to relax here, stay here. I did the latter. So I've kind of just been in the apartment the 3 days that we've had. And for somebody who I enjoy kind of just being on my own, kind of not, I want to say doing nothing, but just kind of reading or watching something or, going out to eat, stuff like that. So that's what I've been doing the past 3 or 4 days. And I think for us, we had a game. So, and the break's always good. It helps guys reset, kind of get back to square one before we go again for next week.
When you look at, your time in Minnesota, and I know you had the loan spell to San Antonio, but when you've been here, and maybe this year more than any other, because you're like legitimately here, you can feel good about being here and in this place. Have you explored much in the state of Minnesota? Do you guys have an opportunity to get out even on a few days like this, even if it's just another city, if it's heading to a lake, if it's heading to a downtown somewhere that's not St. Paul or Minneapolis? Have you explored many things?
I wouldn't say I've done a lot of exploration, but I think I've done a good amount. I think the biggest things for me, it's okay. We're the really good food spots. Whereas, really good restaurants, stuff like that. So I think Dane is really big on restaurants and eating out. So we do that quite a bit. Like we'll go out, like even today, for example, we're going to grab lunch later, just little things like that, discovering new spots. So that's kind of been the biggest thing for me. And I think I said it to someone the other day, like this is going to be like the first summer where I'm healthy and fully ready to go. So I'm really excited for the Minnesota summer this year. Hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, I don't know how your contract is written, so I don't know if like you're allowed to water ski or tube.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do any of that.
Cliff jump or anything like that. Because if you are, then I've got some spots for you. Now, if you can just sit on a boat and relax and watch other people do those things, then there's also a lot of great spots for that too.
Yeah, for sure. Caden's the king of that one. He's he's been saying it since January, dude. Like, we're gonna get on the water when it gets really warm out. You let me know when and where, and I'll be there for sure.
He strikes me as a wakeboarder.
Oh no, definitely, definitely.
Right? Doesn't he strike you as a wakeboarder? Like, I don't know, that's just the vibe I'm getting, like West Side, I don't know, probably Lake Minnetonka, wakeboarding.
Caden is I'd say he's probably more of a sit on the boat, play some music, pump his arms in the air kind of guy, for sure.
Well, and Grace has listened to me mention this on several podcasts. Unfortunately, she's had to bear the brunt of this, but I'm a huge proponent of the East Side. Everybody always drifts to the West Side, but
Yeah.
I highly recommend you traveling to the East Side at some point, especially if you're looking for food spots. I don't know if you get to Dane to do that because I don't know how much he ventures out. I know he's got like a new grill and stuff. He's been chefing up his own things. But if you ever need some East Side recommendations, I've got plenty of them for you that also include water. So there's some good things on this side of town.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm open to anything. I love food, and I'm trying to expand my palate the older I get. I think it's gotten better over the years, especially since I left college, but I'm definitely looking for recommendations.
Yeah, well, my daughter, I'm expanding her palate too. She's 10, and we're trying to get out of the pizza, mac and cheese, chicken
Yeah.
tender days. We're still in that phase, so I'm trying to expand. And steak, she's somehow thrown steak on there. I'm like, oh great,
Yeah,
so you eat
she'll be
filet
fine.
and pizza. I'm like, that's great. That's great. I want to talk about your season. I mean, I had the privilege of talking to you last week for the Apple MLS broadcast before the Atlanta United game, sort of about your journey and out of college, sort of reestablishing, maybe not that you were lacking confidence or you lost it, but just trying to figure out where your place was in this team and with Minnesota United, and how you thought maybe it was going to be there last year, but you never really got locked in. And then all of a sudden you find yourself on loan. In this journey, this brief journey you've had since college, what do you think has been the biggest learning, teaching moment for you if you had to pick one?
I think the biggest thing, and it applies to soccer, and I think it applies to life in general. It's just you never really know where anything is going to take you, and as people, we're always going to plan things. We're always going to have ideas and goals for ourselves in mind, but things don't always work out the way we want them to. They definitely never work out exactly the way we want them to. So I think the biggest thing for me has just been learning to be flexible and just been learning to be able to, be ready for whatever a situation throws at me. So every single year I've had so far has been completely different. And it's kind of given me the tools where I'm just kind of learning to go with the flow a little bit more. I think just trusting in my work, trusting in God's will for my life, and then just letting the rest of it fall into place the way it will. And I think, again, it's still a very long season. So much else is going to change. So I'm just trying not to get too over or just focus on one thing more than the other, and just kind of just let it happen how it does week by week. Every game we've played has been completely different. Every goal I've scored has been completely different, and there's been games where I haven't scored as well. So I'm just trying to take it as it comes.
When you look at your development since coming out of college, and then specifically last season going on loan, and I want to talk to you again about this, because when you get the news and you get the conversation happens that you're going to be going on loan. What was your initial reaction in that moment when you were told that you're going to be on loan? Was it a positive, like, hey, this is my opportunity to kind of go, contribute to this team, hone my skills even more so and get back on track? Or was it more like the disappointment that you were going to be farther away from the first team? Did you feel like you're going to be out of sight, out of mind? Like, how did you view that?
I think it was definitely a bit of both. The news that I was going on loan caught me off guard for sure, because I thought I had done enough to be in the first team picture.
In
And
preseason, like when did you feel like you did enough?
in preseason, going into the year, and the first couple games that we had, I made my debut that last year, so I thought I would just build into it and get opportunities here and there because it's a really long season. But for them to say that early in the year, because I think it was like beginning of April, so that was when it was for me. I thought, well, there's so much a year to go, and you've more or less written me off. That was my initial thoughts. That was the initial thought process I had, and then there was a point where I decided to flip that switch, and it was okay. Well, this is the status quo for the next year, so I'm gonna do myself a disservice if I'm just hung up on the what ifs and what I thought was going to be my reality. I just decided to face the new reality and just do the best that I could with it.
Was there anything in prior to that that sort of had maybe mentally prepared you for something like this? I mean, you talk about your journey in college and being injured, but then you had a tremendous career. And then you talk about being drafted. Was there any time in your life that maybe there was something that happened to you that kind of had prepared you to be a mentally tougher, stronger person, even if it wasn't soccer related?
I think yes, for sure. I think there's been a lot of things that have happened in my life that have helped me prepare for change. Growing up, I've never really enjoyed change. I wouldn't say that I particularly enjoy it now, but I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. I mean, moving to Canada when I was 10 was the biggest move. That was your entire life changes. So that was, I'd say, the first big change that I experienced in my life. And then going on from there, just changing teams, whether when I was still back home, and then changing countries again, moving to the States. And even when I was in the States, every summer I do something different. There was a time I played in California. There was a time I played in New York. And so I've had different opportunities to deal with change. But I think in a soccer aspect, that was definitely the first time where, because going up until now, like most other guys who play at the pro level, you've always more or less been one of the best or the best in your area or whatever it may be. So that was kind of the first time in my life where, the team I was with was like, hey, you might be surplus to requirements at the moment. So that was, I'd say, for sure a first. And every change that I've even mentioned now, they've had a little different aspect to it. And this one was also completely different. So I did have some tools to deal with it, but there's still a lot that I had to figure out on the fly.
I feel like I read something where like, do you consider yourself a New Yorker or do you consider yourself Canadian? Did I read that right somewhere? Because you went to St.
Um,
John's.
I said I'm definitely Canadian, very much consider myself Canadian and Nigerian, but the love I have from New York sometimes makes me say that I feel like a New Yorker to the chagrin of a lot of people around me. But I think when you love somewhere enough, you can 100% say that, hey, listen, like this, my heart belongs here. My heart feels very, very good here. So that's kind of my affinity for New York.
So you're a Knicks fan.
I wouldn't say I'm a Knicks fan, but I'm definitely supporting them now.
Are you just saying
I'm
that because there might be Timberwolves fans that are listening to this? Like, do you feel like you got to kind of cater a little bit to the Minnesota fan base here?
I really should. So go Timberwolves and all that. But my team in this playoffs was the Lakers because I'm a big LeBron fan, have been from since the age of 10. So he's always been the guy that I followed. But as soon as he exited, I kind of have to pivot because I'm a basketball fan as well. So the Knicks are up there for me. I'm loving what the Timberwolves are doing. I love Anthony Edwards. The team, just watching the team playing defensively, offensively, it's been a joy to watch. And as a city, I come from Toronto, where our sports teams suffer a lot. So I can relate with
I
Minnesota.
was gonna say, so you felt right at home when you.
Yes, I can relate with Minnesota teams a lot. So I love seeing how happy it's making them. I saw a stat the other day that no team in Minnesota had lost for quite a while. So I'm glad that I can contribute to that draw, and I love watching what the Timberwolves are doing as well.
Hey, I got to give it to you. LeBron does really well at getting coaches fired everywhere he goes. He's got that. He's got that area cornered.
I have to defend him a little bit because when the level is so high and when you have that much talent and you're a bona fide star, you're one of the greatest of all times. There's a certain standard that you have to uphold that isn't the standard at other teams. So it's very understandable that coaches come and go. But I did hear the other day, Brian Windhorst did say LeBron James keeps away from coaching hires and fires. So I'm just gonna leave that out there. Most people won't believe it, but Brian Windhorst said it, so I believe it.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe. I mean, not that I don't respect Brian Windhorst, but I find that hard to believe that LeBron isn't having a little bit of an influence on that one. Anywho, back to soccer. I just had to get that out there. Back to soccer. When you went to San Antonio, what was your like when you walked on the field there, when your first training session? Now, you just mentioned you spent your time at a lot of different teams. You went and played in California for a bit, one off season. You clearly were at St. John. You played in Canada at St. John's, excuse me, and you were in Canada and then coming to Minnesota. So you weren't a stranger to being a new guy on a team. But what was that like when you joined San Antonio? Did the guys embrace you? Did you feel like you were starting from scratch, having to prove yourself to these guys? How I feel like loan spells can go very different depending on, does that coach feel like this player is being put on you? Did they want you? Like, how are you going to fit into that system? Like, what was that like for you?
I think the biggest credit that I'll give to San Antonio and everyone there is from the very first day. I think the one person I'll mention is Mitch Tainter. The very first game that we had, he was out injured and he came and he sat by me and I was just on the bench. I knew I wasn't going to play that game, but they just wanted me to get integrated into the squad. And he came and he sat next to me in the locker room and he said, "Hey, listen, I spent all night watching your college highlight tapes. I spent all night watching your MLS Next Pro highlight tapes. So I know what you're able to do. I know your ability, and I'm really excited to see what you have to offer for the team." So when the captain of the team says that the very first time you meet him, it definitely makes things a lot easier. It makes you relax a lot. And every single guy in the locker room was incredible to me from the very first day to the day that I left. And in terms of proving myself, I always kind of have that in mind that regardless of what level I am, even when I go play pickup back home in Canada, there's a certain level of, I have to prove myself to these guys. So going in there too, I knew they had just come off a championship win. So they didn't care that I just came from the MLS level. All they cared about was if I could contribute to the team. And I had that point to prove to them as well. And again, the guys at Minnesota as well. So it was a mix of all those things, but they made it really easy for me. The situation was perfect. Alan was really good to me as well. He told me from day one exactly what he wanted from me, and he was great to me the entire time I was there as well.
When you came back then to Minnesota in preseason heading into 2024, and there was so much up in the air from an entire squad standpoint, let alone where you stood in the squad, who was going to be the coach. You had Sean McCauley was the interim, then Cameron Knowles is the interim to the interim, which thank goodness you guys were also familiar with Cam, and there was already such an incredible bond there with the group. But also just not knowing, who's the chief soccer officer, who's the permanent head coach going to be. How did you mentally go into 2024 and what was your sort of mindset?
I think for me, I just tried my best not to get swayed one way or another with everything that was going on. Going into the year, as much as it is a team sport and as much as, there's a whole club and so many things go into making things run, for me, it was just staying focused on what I was doing on the field. I felt like if I put a good enough body of work together, it didn't matter who was the interim, it didn't matter who was the CSO, whatever, as long as I did my part, then I get an opportunity to play. And that was kind of what I just continued to tell myself throughout the entire preseason, even before I came in, the work I did in the offseason, that if I did my body of work and if I put together, a good, like I was played well on the field, I worked out well off the field and, just being a great teammate overall, then I think that if you do all those things, then good things are going to come to you. So that was kind of my mindset, trying not to get swayed too much. As difficult as it was at times, I just try to stay as even keel as possible throughout the entire process.
So then you go through preseason and you come into the regular season. What do you attribute this success to you personally? I mean, because I think, the first goal you score, the first opportunity to get on the field, and people are like, oh, okay, taking notice, but then continuing to do it and perform at that level, even after all the attention that you've gotten and the other teams and opponents are more aware of you and what you can do. You did it off the bench, then you do it as a starter. What do you attribute your success to on the season? What is it?
I
5 goals, 2 assists. You
yeah,
have one of the best goals per 90, like rate in the league.
yeah. I think the biggest thing is because as as good as I've done to start, and in my head, I don't think I've done anything yet. I think, I've done well, I've gotten goals, but for me, until there's still a level that I do want to reach as a player. And I don't think I've come anywhere near that, even with the performances that I've had. I don't think I've played up to my potential. So it's just a matter of continuing to prove myself game in, game out, because the game changes so fast. And I've seen one bad game spiral into two, spiral into three, and so on and so forth. So for me, it's just I still have so much to prove to myself and to so many other people. So going into each game, even the games where I was coming off the bench for 20, 30 minutes, I was just focused on what I could do in that 30 minutes or whatever the minutes was and how well I could play. And even when I'm starting games, I still have this like, okay, you scored last game, but that doesn't mean anything. It's a completely new game. And I'm trying to take it game by game, but also putting into perspective that I have really, really lofty goals that I don't think I'm anywhere near yet. So that kind of keeps me grounded, makes me or continues to remind me that I don't think I've done anything yet. And that gives me the motivation to just keep going each game.
I know you're a confident guy, but you're also very humble. Was there anything in this season that has surprised you, even you yourself, that you've done and been able to accomplish and do on a daily basis or in a game or at a training session? Anything that for you, you were like, kind of surprised or, just like, I don't know, have a goofy grin on your face at some point or rewatching some film or something you did, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot. The one I'll bring up is the goal against Columbus Crew. I know I have the ability to score goals, but in that moment with all the stakes, our first home game, and I know fans are excited to be there, and we're facing a loss, especially considering we didn't have the greatest home record last year. I think that was even till today the moment where for me, I've watched it back enough times where it was like, okay, that was pretty cool, to see fans who probably weren't that familiar with me before that goal, to see how happy that made them and how happy it made my team, to even if it was just for a point. You always want to start the year well. You always want to give your home fans something to celebrate. So I think that of all the goals I scored in every moment we've had this year, that's the one that sticks out. Like, okay, that one was pretty cool. And for it to be my first MLS goal too, as well, that's definitely the one that I think I'll remember the most fondly, for sure.
Anything in particular that stands out to you as far as like something that happens in training or somebody we can talk about Pookie a lot because I mean, he's clearly a world-class striker. And I know you mentioned it on our Apple call last week, just about, that relationship and the graciousness of it. And like, he's been there, done that at every level. He's probably been starting, he's been on the bench. He's done the things that you're doing now. He's been through those steps. And now in a couple games, you bumped him out of that starting spot, but anything in a training session that sticks out to you that someone else did or someone else said to you, or that's maybe not a coach, maybe a player that just like really is like insightful and really kind of like resonated with you?
I wouldn't say anything in particular. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is just an increased level of respect with my teammates. I think, and it's kind of like everybody else. I've been in their shoes as well. When you have a player who hasn't really proven it at that level, they're a good player. You respect them as a player, but until they start doing it on a regular basis, there's certain things that you don't afford them. But once they start doing that, it's just a level of like, okay, like he can contribute, he can help us win games, and just having that respect for my teammates. That's always the one thing. I think every player will tell you that the respect and the acceptance of their teammates are the biggest thing out of everything, bigger than media, bigger than other fans, everything. Like, teammates always come first. So for me, seeing that level of respect kind of increase as the weeks go by has been a testament to the work that I've put in. And it's always a good feeling to have the guys who you're playing with every single day and, going to war with on the weekends to be like, hey, we appreciate you being here. We want you here. And we know you can contribute, and we can't wait to see what levels you go to. So I'd say for me, that's kind of the thing that stood out to me and has made me feel happy.
How do you keep this up and how does the team keep this up? The rate and the level that you guys are playing at.
I think the way we can do it is just a preparation. I think credit to our coaching staff. They do an incredible job of preparing us for each game every week and not getting ahead of ourselves and realizing that as well as we've done so far, there's still so much to do. There's still so many games to play, and approaching each game like we have so far, with the level of preparation, with the level of intensity, and just going in as one and, listening to what we've been given all weekend, implementing that in games. I think that's what will keep us going. A soccer season, unless you're, Bayer Leverkusen this year, who won every single game, there's gonna be ups and downs. But just going in with the exact same mindset that we've had so far this year, I think is the biggest thing that we can do to put ourselves in a good position. We never really know how games are going to turn out. All you can do is put in the body of work, and you can go in and give it 110% and live with the results. And I think if we continue to do that, the sky's the limit for this team.
Is it kind of fun going into a game where like the opponent really has no clue what you're going to do? Where you are unpredictable, not as an individual, but as a team.
Yeah.
Like even against Charlotte, I don't think anybody saw that coming. That formation, that change in just a week's preparation time. I don't know, Eric Ramsey after kind of played it off like, well, it wasn't really that much different if you really look at it, but like even the guys on the broadcast, and they probably had the prep calls during the week, and they're watching every piece of film so far of Minnesota United. Like, is it kind of fun where you can go into a match and like the opposition doesn't really know what you guys are going to throw out there because you've been so adaptable as a club?
Definitely. I think the Charlotte game that you bring up was probably the biggest tell of that. They genuinely were so thrown off by the change in lineup and everything that we did, and I think we've played completely different every game since then. So, credit to the guys. It's never easy to have a new formation, a new lineup every single week, but I think for us, it's definitely fun. Going into games and seeing that teams kind of confused a little bit or the adjustments they have to make on the fly. And I think for us, it's definitely one of the strengths that I think we can keep going the entire year, just being very flexible and just being able to adapt to whatever Eric gives us. And we practice it enough during the week where we're definitely prepared for it when we go into games. So it's definitely something I think will help us as the year goes by.
And I apologize if I've missed this, but has your family been to a game at Allianz Field? I know in 2024 there haven't been that many home games, but have they been to a game yet? Do they plan on coming to a game? What's that kind of look like for you now that you're in the mix full time?
I think before I left Canada, the goal was for them to get out to a game. I don't know how soon it will be. My parents, actually, my whole family actually just went to Nigeria this
Okay.
week, so they're going out for a family friend's wedding out there. So I'm hoping we have so many games, and if it was on the East Coast, it would have been easier. But we don't have any East Coast games, so I'm hoping before the year ends, they'll come out to a game. I know my dad really wants to. My mom will come just to see me more than the game, but if I make her go, she'll go for sure. And my brother is one. He texts me before every game and after every game, so I know he'd love to catch a game as well. And my sister, I would say she's one of my biggest fans. So I know they would love to come out to a game. It's just everyone's working. My sister has a job, brother has a job. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing now. So it's definitely tough to get a moment for everyone to make it down. But we're working on it for sure.
Awesome. And I'm sure they wanted to wait till the weather was like for sure warmer.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
I mean, I know they're in Canada, but at the end of
Canada
the
and
day, if you're
Minnesota.
going to visit somewhere, you might as well go somewhere nice.
Yeah, the weather kind of mirrors each other. Whenever it gets warmer out here, it's the same there. So when it gets warmer there, they know it'll probably be pretty good here as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tanya. I appreciate it. And go enjoy your lunch with Dane. And let me know on any food spots, and I'll give you any recommendations from here on going forward. So thank you for taking the time again today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Kyndra. I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And well, actually, stay tuned. We got segment number 2 coming up. I can't wrap it up quite yet. We got segment number 2, Jeremy Hall, coming up next. Just because the Loons are away doesn't mean you have to watch the match from home. With Loons Watch Spots, presented by Coors Light, you can find a piece of that Allianz Field atmosphere at some of your favorite Twin Cities locations. Check out the full list of locations and upcoming watch parties at MNUFC.com/Loons Watch Spots. All right, everybody, welcome back to Sound of the Loons, segment number 2 with the head coach of MNUFC 2, Jeremy Hall. Thank you for joining me. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Kyle has on the rundown here. The first thing I'm supposed to do is general pleasantries. How are you, etc.
I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking. Yeah, we just had a few days off, so it was nice to just relax with the family and hang out with them, regroup, and then we're back at training today. So it's been good. Nice little few days. The weather has been great today. We had a good training session today, so I'm doing well. I feel like it always puts me in a good mood, this beautiful sunshine.
What a difference that makes. I mean, we could talk all day about what a difference the sunshine makes. But tell me what is a few days of relaxing and hanging out with family? What does that look like for you? What do you do to kind of step away, especially the whirlwind of this last, what has it been, 6 months? I don't even know. With all the stuff with the first team and then being named head coach of the twos. What does a few days look like for you of
Yes,
hanging out?
nice. Well, so like we've actually kind of, I mean, it's been like this for the last few years now, but we kind of pair our schedule with the first team. So it's kind of days off are hard to come by because if we feel like we need a day off, because there's so much fluid movement between the two groups, we're usually in, whether it's a regen or whatnot. So yeah, we had 3 days and I have two little boys, 3, and my little guy is going to be 2 in a couple months. So it's just up at 5 a.m. It's making breakfast, going to the park, playing. They both love soccer right now, so I get some extra touches on the ball. So that part's been amazing. But yeah, like the weather was great. So we were just out and about just all day until they finally passed out, which is always tough to get those guys to sleep. But we had a good time though.
It's always like, man, they're really going to be tuckered out. I hope they sleep in. And then no chance.
No,
Isn't that shocking? Because and they
right.
never want to take naps. And I'm like, you'll wish once you become an adult that that you had taken those naps, you know?
I know. And I'm like, whenever they don't take a nap, I'm like, oh, easy. They're going to bed by 6 and then ends up being 9 and they're still up. And I'm like, man, what's going on? But
It
it's fun.
backfires. It backfires. Yeah, like the oh, we'll skip the nap and go to bed earlier thing. Like, yeah, that backfires because then they're just cranky and a disaster when they are still awake and they're like fighting it. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I know what it's like when you're like, oh, we get a few, days away with the family, which is amazing. But at the same time, you're just busy doing other things, but you get a mental break from the soccer side of stuff to be able to kind of step away. So what has this last few months been like for you? We can talk about, your career, your playing career, with college, going into MLS, being drafted, bouncing around to a few different teams. But then you find yourself as a coach, an assistant coach initially, and now the head coach of the twos. What was the last few months specifically like for you, being tasked with being the assistant for the first team and then finding out that you were going to be named the head coach of the twos?
Yeah, it was, man, it was a lot because at that time, when I think about last year and what that looked like, I think our season had just ended. They made a coaching change at the club, and Cam had helped out Sean McCauley those last few weeks. And we were so busy because we were preparing for the draft. And so, like, Hank and Alex DeRosa and Lucas Wiley were putting all this draft stuff together. So, me and Jono and the academy coaches as well helped out us. We were just watching games and games and getting ready for the draft. So, we didn't really have any time to just like take our foot off the pedal. And then I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was like sometime during the offseason, I was talking to Cam and he's like, well, if Sean takes this position, I go up, like you should start thinking about this. And that's when I was like, whoa, like maybe this could be a possibility. So I started to think about it a little bit more, but didn't want to get my hopes up because we are so busy and there's so much other stuff going on. And then what was it? Maybe a day or two before preseason, Cam calls me and says, look, Sean took on another opportunity. I'm going to be the interim. I need you to help me out. So I'm like, whoa, like what's going on? Like I was at Chick-fil-A with my family, just excuse me, having a little lunch. And man, the experience with the first team was great. I'm super happy for Cam. I've learned so much from him the last couple of years. And obviously him still being with the first team is amazing for me selfishly, but I think he was really prepared for that opportunity, and I think the results and just the buy-in from the players showed. It was really exciting to work with him in a different setting like that, and yeah, he exceeded my expectations and what I thought. So I'm really happy for him. And then to finally get in with the second team, and then that schedule at that point we were so hectic with Open Cup and flying over for games and no real time to kind of just ease into it. But I liked it that way. I thought I got really good support from the academy coaches who took over the second team at time. Justin Ferguson and Alex Marecki did an amazing job, and they've continued to help me out with Jonathan Barber, our goalkeeper coach. So, man, crazy few months, but in this profession and just how my life and how everything's gone, like you just wouldn't take it any other way. That's the only way is chaos. So, just trying to stay above water, but the support has been great.
That's true. I suppose if we take a step back and look at your career and you played at the University of Maryland, to my knowledge, you won a national championship there, correct? I'm sure you
Correct.
share memories with Dane often about just how dominant Maryland can be at men's soccer. But then you got drafted and then you bounced around to a few different teams. So you are used to having to adapt and pivot and be flexible and come into new situations and try to sort of step into a locker room that maybe you're not familiar with and then find your way. Do you feel like that playing career and the way you navigated your career kind of helped you now in this role in this moment?
Yeah, and that's why I love this space that I'm in, because it's the age ranges for me is so important. Just that what is it, 17 to like 22, we might have a couple older, younger kids, more or less, but like that age group in particular, where you can really mentor these guys and you can talk to them a certain way and you can be real and talk about those experiences, um,
Give us an example of a conversation, not naming any names, but a conversation that you've maybe had to have with whether it's a younger player, an older player, and you can be like, look, been there, done that. This is how we're going to navigate this time.
Yeah, so with guys that come down from the first team, it's tough. You want to be with the first team, like being with the second team is tough, right? They want to be up. And so just talking to those guys about, look, like we know it's hard to be here, but now that we're on the field, like it's time to work. Like we got to get you ready for when your number is called, that you're ready to go. Like when I played at different moments in MLS, we didn't have a reserve league, so we weren't getting games. If you weren't involved with the first team, if you weren't playing games, like you were training, but you're not game fit, where these guys can come down and still get meaningful minutes. I think the club does a great job of, how we travel and how we take care of these guys on the road and even our home games. It feels like you're in a first team environment. And so they get those reps, they get those game minutes, which are so important. And I think you can see, with different players that have gone up and down, how they've gone in and they've done well because they've seen those reps, and so talking to those guys about trying to keep their headspace in a right state of mind, even though, they could be a bit discouraged that they're, with the second team. And then vice versa. We have our top academy kids that are going up that are pushing to get into that, right? And so for them, it's about not being complacent, being in this environment, to keep pushing, to keep working hard. What more can we do to get you over that line? And so you get both of those conversations. Every player is different. They need different things. They're, in different parts of their lives, families, relationships, those different things. And so, yeah, school, right? And so like, because I've gotten to experience all of that, I told them, like, I have to live in hindsight where I can just talk about it and you can just take it whichever way you want. And so this space for me is been a lot of fun and I'm really enjoying it.
Has there ever, again, not naming names, but has there ever been a guy where you're like, oh God, this guy's not going to get it? Like it's just not gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like you're not picking up when I'm putting down here. Like if you want to make it at this level, if you want to have a chance, like, or do you sometimes just have to like say what you need to say and it's up to them, take it or leave it, but you got to figure it out.
Yeah, there is. And I think, and I'm very emotional. I've had some really good conversations. I'm very, very emotional, for good and bad, I would say. But we've had some really good conversations with players, like really frank, blunt conversations. And you can see it. Like the reality in professional sports is that at the end of the year, guys get their contracts picked up and some don't. And that happened to me, and I know why. And so I'm trying to tell them, don't do some of the stuff that I did. And it's tough. Like you see some of these guys that don't get picked up and like how hard it is to find another club because the coaching world is small. What do you think about this guy? How's this guy's character? How is this guy as a player? Everything is so connected that every day matters, every detail matters. And it's on us to try and get these guys to buy into that and understand that, because it's really hard when reality hits and you're sitting there being like, well, where's my next team going to be? What's the next contract? How is that going to work out? And so the seasons go by fast. The games come and go so quick. I'm still young, but I'm 36 this year. It goes by.
Do you feel like you're 50 or do you feel like you're 30, 35, 36?
I feel like I'm 20. I'm like,
oh, that's great.
Still? I know.
That's way better. Tell me,
not,
do you ever join in at training session and do you fear getting injured? That's when you know you're old.
Well, I know. And so I've jumped it when Cam was the head coach and I jumped in here and there for whatever numbers, I'm like, man, like my body can't move anymore. That's how I know it doesn't move the same.
Or how you feel the next day or whatever it is. I always joke with Manny because like when he's always out at the training sessions and especially when I was still with the club full time, like he'd be always out watching practice, and he'd kick a ball back or something. And
Right.
he would kind of talk like he could still play. And I'm like, dude, until you get out there and do the beep test or something,
Oh, yeah.
or you know what I mean? The agility aspect of playing is like nothing compared to whatever you're doing on the elliptical or the bike or running in a straight line every day. It's like next level.
It is so true.
But you are still very young, so I'm not gonna put that past you. But I just wondered if you ever jump in. I think we've talked about this with Fernando Adi before too. Like you look at his playing career as well, and just like you think you could do something at a certain level, then you go play in some pickup game, and you're like, whoa, it's been.
Don't let Adi fool you. He's a machine. He is still running like those guys. And in preseason, we were down in Tucson, and he's like, let's go for a jog. And I said, okay, let's go for a jog. Next thing you know, I'm sprinting, and I'm like, Adi, what are you doing to me? Like, he's doing it on purpose. He wanted to make me look really bad, and he did a really good job. But Adi's the man.
Oh,
He's a specimen.
so how did you end up in Minnesota? Talk me through
Oh,
that. All
that's
this
a good
path
one.
and this life changes and moves and careers and whatnot. How did you end up in Minnesota?
Yeah, so 2018, I was finishing my last year, which I didn't think it was going to be my last year, with Sacramento Republic in the USL. My wife lived in Toronto, so I was back in Toronto during the off seasons, and so 2018 ended. Went back and forth on a contract, didn't work out. So I was like, I'm not going to chase it. I'm just going to get into the coaching side of things now. And so I reached out to, excuse me, some of the people that I knew in Toronto, and I started coaching their grassroots, like 5 to 14-year-olds. It was amazing. Like I really got to learn, as I did my courses, how to coach and how to teach. And so I started there, was there for a few years, and then Amos McGee,
Mm,
I worked with him out in Portland.
yes.
He reached out to me in the beginning of 2022 and said, we have this position as an assistant coach open. Cam's the head coach. You should go through the process and just see
Now,
how
did
it
you
works
know
out.
Cam as well? Did you know Cam at all as
I
well from Portland or
we
anything?
Yeah, we knew each other, but we
Okay,
weren't like we wouldn't text each other or friends. Like we weren't like that, but we knew of each other.
got it.
And so I got to know Cam over this process and Amos and talking to Alex DeRosa. And so they offered me an opportunity, and I spoke about it with my wife, and I just felt like it was a really cool opportunity to get out of your comfort zone again, just how my career went, just used to moving and stuff like that. And so made the move here beginning of 2022 and still been here. So it's been good.
So then when you come into this coming season, you've been the assistant coach for MNUFC too. You've clearly talked about the joy you find from working with this age group. Then
Hmm.
you join the first team with Cam and as an assistant coach, and then all the change happens, and then you get named the head coach of the twos. How has your role changed? Did you feel like ready for it? Was there no hesitation that this is where you wanted to be next, was the head coach of the twos? How was that process for you? And maybe how was it what you thought, or maybe not what you thought, or what's been the biggest challenge for you so far as the head coach of the twos?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I knew I wanted to be a head coach again. I just didn't know when and where. I didn't want to rush it. I felt like I'm in a really good learning environment, working with Cam, being around Adrian and those guys when his staff was here, and then, working with Sean for a little bit before he left, and now Eric. So um, when I was with Cam, I was like, man, I'm in a really good learning environment. Cam's obviously very experienced and been around for a while. And so I was really just enjoying it. And it wasn't up until that point when he was going to move up to the first team when I really thought about it, like, oh, wow, like, this could be a reality. Then you get into the position, and then you just realize that there's so many more decisions you have to make, and I'm very just like, oh man, I don't really care about that, I guess. But then now I know, I'm like, these decisions matter, so it's a lot more decisions. I think I don't want to say there's more care, because you obviously care, but I think just like there's a bit more pressure. Like your name is at the top of the list now. You want your team to succeed. Like you want these players to succeed. You want to see these guys learn and continue to grow. And so I think that part has been more eye-opening, I guess, because I haven't lived it in this space before. But like I said before, like the support that I've gotten from everybody in the club, the collaboration within the club. I meet with the first team every morning in their meetings. I know what they're doing. The players have all been great and just really open. The training sessions have been great. And so I'm really enjoying it. I love the preparation of everything. I love, like I said, like how real you can be with these guys and don't have to filter things like you would some of the younger academy kids. So every day is a new day. I'm learning. I'm still growing as myself. But like I said, like the support has been great here so far.
So when you look at your day to day, kind of give us the view behind the curtain. You just said you meet with the first team staff every morning, but even because the twos are in such a unique position, right, of losing guys to the first team, whether it's for training or actual games, or picking up academy guys to pull up to join you for a game or for training sessions. How does that happen? What are those conversations like? How is the collaboration and communication regarding that, players and the movement between?
Yeah, so Eric will usually send out what he wants his week to look like. Obviously, that'll change just on the day, just with player availability. So every morning at 9, we'll meet for like 10, 15 minutes. They'll go over what they need, what players they need. From that, we'll look at our U19s and say, okay, we either are going to add players or we're just going to keep our squad a bit smaller, and then we can work more individually, more smaller groups and links and chains like that, which has been good. So we have that morning in the meeting. We'll go back. We'll adjust what our session will look like. We'll do the session. We'll come back, eat. Those guys will be in the gym. Depending on the day of the week, we have video. So we'll either watch video collectively as a group, or we'll have individual clips for some of the guys. And then we prepare for tomorrow. And so we'll have an idea of what we want to do on the day, but then the day of, we'll have to fine tune the numbers and what we have from availability standpoint.
When you look at some of these guys, and I've had the privilege to interview some of them for this podcast, some of the really young guys and some of the guys that are the up and down, I interviewed Paige last week, and he was talking about his lessons learned when he first got pulled up and was in some first team training sessions, and how he needed to get a little stronger, and different things. When you see these guys then come back to you, whether it's just for a training session or for it's a game, what's their demeanor like? Do you notice a little bit of a swagger, of an uptick, or do you notice more like does it depend on how their training session went? How do you help keep them a little bit even keeled in what they're doing to not get too high or not get too low?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to those guys in particular. I think their mindsets have all been good. I think one, it's hard as a player because, like I said, we all want to be with the first team. We're all pushing towards that, and so when guys get a little bit of that sniff and they come down, I don't think that from that standpoint there's been any drop in level. I think the hardest is probably for those first team guys that come down, and then it's just talking to those guys and letting them know, like, look, like, it's just a place of care. Like, we love these guys and we're just trying to help them take over. One of the cool things that we've done a lot this year is we've had, and I think you might have been out there a few times, is that we've actually joined training sessions.
Yes.
Like, we've helped out, the first team in preparation for some of their games. And even though we're helping those guys out, it also helps us out because the intensity of that our guys bring to show, like, Eric and his staff, like, yo, this is what we can do, has been really great and positive. And so we've done that every week. And I think the feedback from the first team coaches have been good, because why not have our group help those guys out rather than like the first team guys that are just like on that bubble do it, right? We can give it a bit more life and intensity. And so those joint sessions have been really, really cool and very beneficial for the players as well. But I think the attitude, first and foremost, from the players has been great. And I feel like I have that personality where if it's not, like, I have no problem, like I said, that line of honesty and being frank, letting them know that that's not good enough.
So, to compare sort of this iteration of Minnesota United to the past previous seasons, there's been a clear message from Khaled that we are going to play younger players. We are going to give them an opportunity, like a clear, real opportunity to participate in the first team, to make it to how do you know if you don't give them the chance?
Right.
So do you notice even in your training sessions and when there is that movement back and forth, or maybe even within the guys themselves, when it has been so obvious that there is a very cohesive nature to the way this season has gone this far, and including the academies and the twos, that they feel like there is a real chance, a real opportunity to be included based on their performance? Does that make sense in what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can also see it within our roster build. I mean, I think last year we had 15 guys signed to the second team, where this year we have 8, and so we're showing those 19s and those 17s that, look, the pathway is real. If you do all the right things, like, you will have opportunities. I think the last 2 games we started our U19, excuse me, keeper Oliver. The game before that, we started a 16-year-old Kai, and When you look at our bench, when we make changes, it's usually our U19s that are coming in. And so I think for these guys, it's a real pathway. It's a real opportunity. It's different from what we've done in the past because our second team has had more signed guys. So if I'm a young player in this club, you're really like, wow, man, I actually really have an opportunity to be involved in the second team. And then from that, again, we have those joint sessions with the first team. So then Eric is able to see them. Cam, Dennis, they're able to see these guys front and center.
So talk to me about this team this year, MNUFC 2. I know the results haven't necessarily been there yet, but it's also been a lot of change, a lot of movement, a lot of, just figuring out. At the beginning, who was picking the team every week, because there was an uncertainty of still what was this thing going to look like going forward as we talked about the changes with the chief soccer officer, hiring a new head coach, where's Cam going to be, staying with the first team, all that kind of stuff. And Minnesota United too, MNUFC too, is still so young. I mean, this is a team that just started in 2022. How does this team look to you? Sort of what's your thought process on this season in this group and how it moves forward in this 2024?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been super exciting, to be honest with you. I think I've been in the job maybe 6-7 weeks now, and they've gone by so quick. But I would probably say, aside from the Sporting Kansas City game, that I've been super proud and excited of these guys. And not that I wasn't in that game in particular, but it was just moments. I think the biggest thing for me is we want to train the right way, we want to play the right way, and that comes down to just desire and fight, and being hard to play against. I think because we're a younger team, there's going to be a lot of growing pains up and down, like, good moments and bad moments. And that's what this team and this league is about, development, and so we get those guys that come down from the first team that, we're trying to push those guys and keep them at a certain level from a fitness standpoint. And then we have our guys that we believe in and our academy kids that we're trying to get over the hump and see how they do at a higher level. And so, yeah, it's been really fun to see their commitment in these last little bit. Like I said before, like, I'm very emotional, and I've talked to Colin and I've talked to the first team staff about it. Like, I'm so used to winning ever since I was a young kid that, like, that part has been really tough for me, but I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, like, the long-term project of, okay, are we seeing some of the things that we've worked on in training? Are we seeing some of our principles build out? We've changed our whole game model from what it's been like in the past. And so looking at those smaller, I guess they call them KPIs now, but looking at those smaller goals, are we reaching those? And then, hopefully results come by. The thing about me is that I do believe that winning is a part of development. And so even though we may not win every game, our goal is to still push that. That is still the standard, even though we're looking at some other things for these guys. So I think it's been good so far, like I said, and I think it's a learning curve for all of us, myself included.
So who are the leaders on this team? Who do you lean on as a young head coach, as a new head coach, to sort of help guide this ship on a daily basis on the pitch? Because that's the other challenging thing. And I remember talking to Cam about this when he was the head coach of the Twos, that, it's when you don't have the same group necessarily at training every day because they're getting pulled in different directions, it can be hard maybe at times to have this cohesive nature within your group. How do you do that? And who do you also lean on to help you with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the players are the ones that they're around themselves more than they are with the coaches, right? And so I think the mix of guys that we have here have been great. Alex Smear is one of them who's been
Who now
great.
has been up with the first team for a bit, right? With these contracts.
Exactly. And so, like, that's another one who goes up and down, but Morris Duggan has come down and done really well for us. We have Rory Driscoll, who's been hurt a bit, and he's just coming back for us, who's been great for us. Jesse Kahn's been with the group for a while now. Britton Fisher's another one. We signed Finn McRobb, who's been a great signing for us, who's done really good so far. And then one person in particular that has really stepped up was Cage. You mentioned Cage. We had a really good video reflection after the Sporting Kansas City game, and he was one of the players that spoke up in that meeting that I was like, man, like, that's really big for you, because I think from a talent standpoint, I think Cage has everything to be a first team player and to have a great career. And to see him speak in that meeting, in that setting with everybody in the room, coaches included, was really big for me. And so now we're just trying to push them to show us more on the field, take games over, be brave, show your personality. And so those guys in particular, and I'm sure I'm probably forgetting a few, but the group has been great so far. And so we just got to keep those guys ticking over.
So does the fam come to all the games, the home games? Like how much are they at training or out on the pitch or get to like kind of, because the hours you guys put in are crazy, right? I mean, I know it's NFL and it's other things, but we've seen all these behind the scene things of the hours that these coaches put in. And when you leave the facility, your job isn't really done either. You're watching film, you're doing stuff,
Right.
it's nonstop. So how much do you get to include them in what you do? I remember Cam when he was the twos head coach and being in the broadcast booth, and his girls always came up on the same club level when he was doing the film and gave them big hugs, big kisses. I like how much you get to include your family actually in the activities.
Yeah. So my kids are a bit younger than Cam. So the 7:30 kickoffs, those are late. So
Yeah, that's rough.
the last couple of years, they would come for maybe like a half and then go just because it was late. It's actually crazy so they've been here a year now. And so my oldest is obsessed with Minnesota United. It's actually pretty cool. Like every day I go home, they want to sing Wonderwall and they go to the games and he's waking up at 5 a.m. saying, I got to put my jersey on. And I just got to be like, bro, it's dirty. Like we need to wash it. You have yogurt all over your shirt. Every time I leave the house now, they want to come. It's really cute. I have to find a good day for those guys to come in so they don't just cause havoc in here because they will run and kick balls at everything, but they love it. And so, I get to go home and I watch games and they'll sit on the couch with me and watch. So that part's cool. Sunday we play at 2:00. They will definitely be there.
Yeah.
So they'll want to run onto the field and get to experience that. But it's I'm not pushing soccer on them, but I'm kind of pushing it on them, but I'm not, so.
Well, you're more just pushing like the togetherness of it. You know what I mean? Like getting to be a part of what you do, right? I mean, of course, would you love it if they played soccer? I'm sure. But like just that they want to be where you are and what you're doing and like be a part of that. Like to me, I mean, and if you brought them up there, I guarantee no one would care if they wreaked havoc because almost everybody up there has young kids, not all the players, but the staff, a good chunk of the staff. And so like there's nothing better than having, I think, your kids at something. And like it just brings a different levity, like it just brings a different energy. That's why the kids go out on the field at the end of the Minnesota United games. It's the same thing. Like everybody loves that. It's the thing that gets the most clicks.
It is. It's so true. I brought him out. I think last year we had like an easier regen session. We were the only team in and I asked him if I can bring him in and actually the players loved it. Like they were kicking the balls with the players and stuff like that, picking up cones and stuff. So it was really cool. They love being a part of it.
That's awesome. Well, you could give him get him more than one jersey. I bet Angie or somebody would hook
I know.
So you can have a rotation if one's got chocolate or yogurt on.
Exactly. I need to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time. I love hearing your story. I love seeing your energy and almost every answer you gave me, you have this like underlying sort of wry smile that I just feel like truly you can just sense that you really enjoy what you're doing and what you've got going on there. So I appreciate you taking the time during your busy schedule as you're running around with like a chicken with your head cut off.
Yeah. And it's nice to finally get to talk to you and looking forward to more conversations. It was fun. You made it super easy.
Well, I appreciate that. I've got a whole slew of Minnesota games, so I'm sure I will see you up at NSC, if not for training. I tell my daughter plays for a club here in the Twin Cities. She's only 10, but I tell them all the time, I'm like, you guys have got to go to the twos and the academy games. You cannot just go be like, hey, we got to get to Allianz to the first team. And like last week they were doing Spring Cup at NSC, a lot of her club teams. So I sent them, I said, the twos have a game up there. The 15s have a game of, I think the 15s and the 17s had games up there too. Maybe I'm like, you guys got to go and bring your teams, bring the teams up there to watch these other games too, because that's, if you can hold that whole like see it, be it thing, you don't just have to go watch the first team. You can watch the other steps to be a part of the academy in the second team.
Yeah, and there's some good talent in the academy in the second team, and obviously we don't play at Allianz, but like I said, there's some exciting guys that, could break into it soon. And so we encourage everybody to come out and watch us play for sure.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of supporting that. So I'll try to get everybody out there from the club. So thank you again for taking the time.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to it. I'll see you up at NSC, I'm sure, if not at Allianz.
Okay. Take
All right,
care.
thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye.
All right, thanks, everybody. That's another episode of Sound of the Loons presented by Alina Health. We'll see you again in a couple weeks.